Okay, this is going to be a sample project of walking through a fairly complex pattern out of a magazine and entering it into Quickdraw using repeats and annotations in color order. And in this particular case, I'm using a pattern that was in Handwoven Magazine on November in 2021, and this was page 71 in that magazine. So this particular pattern is fairly complicated, and it's an 8-shaft, 8-treadle pattern with fairly complex repeats. The weft sequence, again, has repeats in it. The weft sequence structure is the same as the color order, and the warp, the structure is independent from the color order. So I'll walk through how to do all that stuff. So let me first set up with an 8-shaft, 8-treadle floating selvage project. So those will all be on the same screen. So I go here to 8-shaft, 8-treadle, floating selvage. When I go back, I'm now ready to go. And first thing I want to do is clean up the tie-up. I'll just clear that out. Come in with that tool. Define the first line. I want to toggle that selection. Toggle selection, there we go. And select that section, toggle the selection. So I now have the tie-up indicated. Let me go ahead and enter the warp. And so it starts out 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'll just enter the structure and then I'll think about colors later. And oops, I forgot the floating selvages. So let me put the 2 selvages in and then put in the basic pattern. So that's got the first half of the pattern, another 4 off the bottom, and then a full run from bottom to top. And there's an odd thread here that's going to be used as a center marker, and 2 more floating selvages. So that's the basic warp structure. Now the other thing I'm also going to do is select all those, and for the moment I'm just going to set them to a weight thread. And let me set the weft to black just for what we're doing. That's going to be a little bit easier to deal with. Now, what I want to do is let's go ahead and start setting up the repeat structures. So the first repeats is 6 repeats on that first block. So I ask for an annotation, right click to clear it, X. 6 says do it 6 times. When I hit the plus, it adds the marker up there. 2 times the next blocks. So I select the block I want. Right click to tier it, X2 plus, and select the next block. Again at times 2, and then that whole thing's done twice. So if I select that, add it again, I've now got another layer of times 2 on top. Now a times 6 on the next block. X6, that's a right click followed by the X6, add, and then I want 2 times 2 times 2. So I've got a times 2, add, another times 2, and then that whole set twice. Oops, I got an extra one in there. Drag that down to get rid of it. Oops, I can't read. That was a times 3. That gives me a times 3, and then I'm going to drag that back up over the 2 so it changes to a 3. So I've got these blocks set up there, the times 3 and the times 2, so I need 4 times over here. And I didn't put those threads in. So it doesn't matter when I do them. So that adds those guys. Let me just set them white for the moment. And I'm going to need that set 4 times. Right click, X4, and add it. So that gives me that basic structure. Now, the next thing it asks for, the pattern is going to give me this structure with a center divide and then the next structure. And look carefully at the comment here. So what I'm actually going to do, I could do the ×2 across just the repeat structures and ignore this guy's marker thread. If I do that, then I'm going to have to insert a thread into the middle of the pattern. There's like 400 ends, so it's a little harder to find the middle. So what I'm actually going to do is set this there so that when I do the repeat, it will actually include that thread. So at the left edge of the pattern, I'm going to have the two floating selvages and then this extraneous thread that's not in the pattern. But that would be easier to delete later. And that is ×2, right click, X2, plus, so I've now got that whole thing ×2. So that right there is accounting for like 400 threads. And so that gives me the structure. Now let me go work on the weft for a couple of minutes. So the first weft is there. And actually what I can do is use my sawtooth tool. So I've got a whole bunch of those threads, and for the moment I'm just going to make them black so you can see them. So that's got the first chunk, second chunk. Okay, so I'm going to start coloring those guys in now. And I've got that first block, and I want them black. The next chunk is going to be white. And then I'm going to need some more colors, so let me just add the rainbow here. And the next block is green. Next block white, and then next block red. That one's white. This block is red. The next 12 threads are yellow. Then 4 red. 4 more white. White, 4 more green. And then the 4 here are going to be white again. And now the last block of threads, I actually need to clean that up. So there are those 4 followed by, oops, okay. So that's got the end of the pattern. Select those guys once I'm a little bit more careful. And those are black. So now I have the basic weft structure in place. So the black's white, green, and so forth. And that should be the basic structure. Now, the next thing I need to do is add the repeats on the treadling. So let me first get the block of blacks. And right click, ×1 8. It's 18 times for that one. 2 times for the white block below it. It's 2 plus 8 times for the green block. Two times for the white block again. Right click, X2 plus 4 times for the first 8 yellow threads. Right click times 4 plus, and those next 4 are single repeat, and then the reds are 2 repeats down there. X2 times 2 on the white below them. Eight times on the green. Right click X8 plus, and the white block is 2 times. White block, right click X2 plus, and the final block is 18 times of the black. X1 8 plus, so now I've got all of the weft colors repeated, and the whole thing should be done 4 times except for the last structure. So that's all of this stuff. Right click, clear it, X4 and plus. Okay, so I've now got all the repeats for warp, weft, the colors in for the weft. Next thing I really need to do is simply to go fill in the weft color order, and we will look at that. So as I go to color order, so I've got 88 threads. So I replace the one with an 88, and actually I can make those black, and I just hit the numbers in a return. It's adding those down. So 1, 3, and 5 are all black. The 2 middle ones are purples. So I can drag the purples in. Okay, so I've now got the color order set up, and it says do this whole thing twice. Now, what gets interesting is I've got to figure out how to do the color order here, because it's not quite do it twice, because I've got this one odd thread they wanted in a contrasting color. So what I'm actually going to actually, let me go ahead and enter the times 2, and then we'll look at see what happens. So I select that block times 2 plus. So now what I have is 400 warp threads identifying color, and the structure is 294. And look, that doesn't seem right, so I need to look and figure out why the structure is. So let me look at the structure times 222, 222, and so there's a missing, there's enough, okay, so this block should have another times 2 in it. Okay, now I've got 406 warp threads identified in the structure 400. And so now what's happened is when the original author did the thread counts, they did not include the 2 floating selvages, 2 more floating selvages, the center thread, and I just added the repeat of that center thread. So that's where those 6 threads are. So at this point I've got the 200 warp threads. The color is 200 threads. The structure is 406. So what I want to do is go ahead and add a couple of threads. Let me add, I want to account for the 2 floating selvages first. So I'm going to put the 2 up here. And then I want 1 for the white thread. And then I can move the 88 over here. So I've got the 2 floating selvage, the separator I'm going to add to mark it, the 88, the 8, and then actually I can get by with a couple of other tricks. I can just drag another 8 over here if I want another purple 8, add it, I want a black 8, add it, another 88. So now I've accounted for the first repeat. Now I want to throw in another white thread. And another 88. The 8. Black 8, the purple 8. And another 88. So now I've got 2 float, 2 floating selvage, 1 separator, 88, 8, 8, 8. That X 8. That 8 is extraneous, so I didn't need it. So I've got the 88, the separator, 8, and I need 2 more floating selvages on the end. So now I've got 406 warp threads accounted for in the color, 406 threads accounted for in the structure. And I've got all the wefts identified. So I've got the whole pattern identified. If I hit the expand button, my first reaction was, oh crap, I broke it. Now the other thing I did, let me do an undo. You'll notice I saved it now before I repeat it. And what I want to do is drag that one out of the way, because that is not something I want to do. So now I've got the color sequence. And if I save it, it's going to save with the color sequences and the sequencing and the repeats and everything else. And when I expand it, it may be a harder process to undo. You'll notice my first reaction is everything went blank. And you realize the pattern is just that large. And I've actually now created about 1,200 weft threads. Yeah, almost 1,300 weft threads. So now I can screw it as I scroll through it. So that gives me the entire pattern. And a short form version of it, if I do the undo, it goes back to the original short form version. And actually, if I do a print page setup and I ask for the color order, I can look at that. If I look at the print preview, it's going to give me the weft color order is indicated on the weft pattern, so it's not a problem. And it gives me the sequence, the color sequencing, so I can actually see the whole raw pattern that's there. And when I go back to the edit view, I can actually see that pattern, and all of that information is now saved in the WIF file as its output. Thank you.